Hello everybody and welcome back to the damn sofa. That's the sofa behind me, along with my shady sidekick, Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane. And if you don't know by now, my name is Paul. Now today we are going to be gathering around the proverbial and literal sofa, I guess, to be discussing a very hot topic case, I guess, if you could say that hot topic. But you saw the thumbnail. We're going to be discussing NK Nicole Kessinger. And this is Chris Watts' former alleged, or not alleged, mistress. And what we're specifically discussing is there was, first of all, the audio version of this came out before, and now like the visual along with the audios or whatever has come out, and it's just another interview. It's like NK, a couple of detectives, her father, and she's in this room and she's answering questions and whatnot. Okay, so that's the skinny on it, right? So a couple of things. First of all, if you've been watching my stuff, usually what I'll do is I'll like take little segments out and put them in here. I'm not doing that for this video, literally, and I've linked the whole video down below. Literally what I'm doing for this video is I made notes. You know, it's like over 3 hours long, okay? So it is long. To a lot of people, it's, I don't want to say like old news, but it's old news. This specific one, I had never heard the audio or anything, so this is like brand new to me, right? And I was like, oh, I'd never watched this one. Now, I had seen the other interview that she did, and, had some opinions on that, so there's that. Now, before we even get into it, this is not a video of, I'm going to prove that she's guilty, or it had something to do with it. I'm going to prove that she didn't. It's not that. It's me offering my opinions, and I definitely have some, on the things she's talking about, some of her body language, behavior, tone of voice, that kind of thing, and whatnot. So, I've never gone so deep into this case, because I know there's all these different, well, didn't she do this, but then this was proved that she didn't, so on and so forth, right? Feel free to drop it in the comments along the way. I'm always eager to hear. So that's it. So what I'm going to do is literally I have my phone here and I'm just going to start going through and referencing different things from the video that I saw and making, some commentary and opinions on it. If you are interested in this case and you haven't watched this, meaning not this video, obviously watch my video please, but the video of her, this interview, I definitely suggest watching it and listening to it. It's definitely something that is going to anger you, and we'll talk about that too before we totally get into it. So yeah, that's it. Now also don't forget, if you like my video here, if you like the channel, give it a subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed to the channel if you've been a long time viewer. Also remember I have my other channel, that podcast channel. Make sure you're subscribed to that. Over there I'll go live sometimes. I will do kind of like reviewing headlines of recent cases or updates, stuff like that. And I have my scary movie channel as well. I'll put stuff on there. That one's more like a hobby. I just do stuff, as it feel like it or whatever. All the links are down in the description. So, that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, let's just see here. Let's check on Roscoe. Let's make sure you okay back there. You okay? Okay. We're going to talk about Chris Watts NK. So, if you're, if you need some love, just let me know. You got to make sure he's all right. Okay. So, let me get to my little thing here. I had it pulled up, and I guess I hit it sitting here talking so much. Okay. So, this interview takes days, days after the event took place. She's with the detective father. We talked about that. Okay. So, in the beginning of the video, she starts off so lifeless, right? And almost and they tell her, they're like, you need to speak up. And I mean, just over the top. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. And it's almost just a level of dramatics. I'm come on, this seems fake to me, right? And it might be authentic, it might not be, but it's just frustrating because I'm you're here in this moment. And if it wasn't for the absolute turn 360 that she does within moments of the video, I wouldn't be so hardcore about why are you overly being dramatic here? But anyways, so they want to get intel into the life of Chris and the family. They're trying to piece this together. That's the point of it, obviously. She says they met early June, maybe May. They met at work, very casual. She says he never wore a ring. Hold on. She says that he never wore a ring, he never said he was married, and he never said he had kids. Now, this is one of the things right here that, for example, I remember this whole thing going around about, well, didn't she look at, look them up on Facebook and find out that they were married, so that means that was a lie. But then other people are saying, no, that was proved incorrect. You see where I'm going with this? That whole dynamic to that, I mean, I don't know which way is up with that one, right? And we'll talk more about like some of this as we get a little bit deeper into it. So, and this is part of the part where we're getting ready to get a little deeper into it. Okay, and excuse me while I just kind of read my phone or here for these notes that I made. Okay, so she says one day he says that he has kids, and that was cool. Okay, right. I'm reading my notes right here, and it's just jogging my memory. Okay, so during this interview, she's like, and one day he tells me he has kids, and she says it, and she's like, that's cool. And the officer's like, was that sarcastic? And she's like, no, it was so cute. He's a dad. And she literally talks like that, right? For that part. And that's where I'm like, girl, like 5 seconds ago, you were like, yeah. Acting all weepy and mopey, and then all of a sudden just, you know, and I mean, great that that happened. We needed her to speak up and be a little bit more lively, right? Also, what doesn't help the situation is that we saw the other video, right? Now, I had seen that one a hot minute ago, where it's like she couldn't get enough of that spotlight in that video. So then to see her turning right around with this one, being like, yeah, I'm just like, we know you like the attention, right? Anyways, so she goes into that and all that. She says that he tells her about a significant other and that they were separating. She says she did not know Shanann's name for a while, but that he told her his kids' names pretty quick. Now, we'll get to this part later about how she has an issue saying Shanann's name. And this whole aspect of the children, her meeting them and whatnot. Okay, so let's keep going with this part. So they spend some time in the aspect of when he told her he was getting a divorce, and she says it was before Father's Day. She says that they talked on the work phone, and when she realized he liked her and she liked him, she wanted to move it to his personal phone. And I believe she said that like he had 2 lines, but she only had 1 or whatever, because remember, she was like contracted there. And so she wanted to move things off of the work phone, his work phone, I guess, to their private phones or whatnot. She says to be honest a lot. I write that down, and she does, right? Now, I mean, a lot of us will say this, right? So I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, well, that means she's lying or whatever. Yeah, but it's just to such an extent. And I guess I should go ahead and preface this because you can probably by now see, like, yeah, I have a little bit of a bias, if you will. And I don't even know if bias is the right word. So here's my thing. Whenever this case comes up, and we're talking about, you know, Chris or NK or whatever, right? Immediately all I'm thinking of is like the picture of Shanann and the girls, you know, that vision. So when someone like NK, who, regardless of what you might think or believe, your own personal thoughts of, does she, you know, have something directly to do with it or not directly, whatever. She was part of the situation where this man ended up making choices to do what he did, right? So when you see the mistress talking about these things and then knowing what the outcome was, it's, you know, slightly infuriating, to be honest. So there's that dynamic going on, and so that doesn't help the situation, okay? So there's that. So when she's saying like, oh, to be honest, I definitely think that there are dynamics of this that she is embarrassed over, is trying to make sound better than they really are, things of this nature. And we'll talk about these as we go. So anyways, she says that Chris was never hostile or scary. He was an introvert. He was overall a really chill dude. They never argued. Now this is one dynamic because I believe her on this, because I think one thing that we saw take place between Shanann and Chris, and when I say saw take place, through, you know, looking back, the evidence that we have seen as the general public, Chris doesn't seem like he said anything to Shanann. He doesn't seem like the type of person that spoke up to his own mother, to anything of that nature. He let things bottle up. So when she's like, oh, he seemed really chill, he didn't do this, I'm like, well, probably so. Obviously, I think he was a completely different character with Nikki than he was, you know, with other people. I think he probably just portrayed whatever people wanted to see out of him, or what he thought they wanted to see, if that makes sense. And so it does sound like, you know, yeah, Shanann probably ran things to a good degree at the house, meaning, you know, she was more of like the, like, what do you call it? Not the assertive, but assertive person, like the dominant person, right? And I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but you see that in most relationships, right? Where it's like one person's okay with a person being the cruise ship, you know, director. You know what I'm saying? That's what we call it here in this household. So anyways, okay. let's get into this next part. She says they always spent time at their house, but that she had been to his house twice very briefly. She's like, I didn't want to be there. That was someone else's life and home, and she respected that. Now, I got some thoughts on that, so please hold. She says that he said he was sleeping in the basement. They were separated but not divorced, getting ready to sell the house. When asked if the house they lived in, and Nikki says that, yeah, it did. Okay, so this is like one part where you're thinking about this. And again, it goes back to my thought process on knowing what ended up happening and then envisioning her in Chris and Shanann's home. And this is where I go to. Because Nikki will say in this interview that her mistake was not waiting until he was done with his thing, right? Now, I think at this point we can probably put two and two together and realize that we're going based on what she said it's like being, that's really what Chris said. You know what I'm saying? Like, he portrayed this as whatever. So that's the assumption here. That being said, yeah, I mean, I'm just imagining going to someone's home. You can tell if something is like lived in that capacity. And so I find it weird. Now, maybe he did go through beforehand and like take out pictures of them or whatever. Who knows what all he did. But my little spidey senses, I feel like would have been up where I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're hooking up with a dude, dating, someone who's still living at home with their spouse and children. I mean, unless you were just wanting to have a fling, which from the things that come from her mouth don't sound like that, that's a part that I just have issue with, right? Because I'm just like, you can tell, right? You can tell. And even if the guy is saying blank to you, there's just a vibe of like, this is unfinished business. Like, it's complicated. It's written all over that scenario, right? So to me, you know, it's just like, and maybe this was her learning lesson. I don't know. I wasn't there. Anyways, let's keep going. She says on one occasion she went over to the house to help him set up his FitnessPal app. And she says she just stayed in the front room and he grilled chicken and carrots for lunch. And this is one of the things where she's very eager to tell everybody about like her workout stuff and her diet and da-da-da-da-da. And it just kind of like sets a little awkward for the scenario that's going on, right? And again, like when he was asking her in this, when I say he, I'm sorry. When the detective is asking her like, did you use any apps or did you do any of this? And I think personally he probably meant apps in the way of like Tinder or something like that, you know, or maybe they knew about the calculator. Because remember how they were hiding, their pictures are like Chris was hiding certain things on that app on his phone. And so, and again, correct me if I'm wrong with that, but I felt like they set that up or something, or they found the hidden pictures in there. And so that's where I wonder if she knew about that or not. Help me out in the comment section, because I can't remember now that I'm doing this if they both did that knowingly, but then why would they? Because it's just on his phone. I don't know. Drop it in the comments. Let's keep reading. Okay. Now, when she says this, she says she stayed just in the front room. She makes this big ordeal, and this is what I forgot to say earlier, about, oh, it's someone else's house, it's someone else's life, and that's not right. But I'm like, but you're there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, but you're still there, and you're still screwing this guy, right? And I get, like, that's their home, that was something else, and even in like, if you could, like, say it's, like, completely different from this situation, you're dating somebody, and it's this scenario where it's like, look, I'm with my, we're in the middle of a divorce and this and that. I just don't even think I would go over there. I just don't even think I would go, especially when children are involved, and she'll try and make such a big deal out of that, and we'll talk about it in a minute, because I just feel like, yeah, that's how you respect that, is you just don't go. Like, let's just meet out for dinner somewhere. I don't feel good about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just never know, right? Obviously. Okay, let's keep going. She says the second time was like July 14th or 15th. They stopped in, but not for very long after they were out. And this time she saw a picture of Shanann and the kids. Okay, here we go. She said that, you know, she's like, wow, he has this great house, a beautiful wife and kids. Why would he want to leave this? And she says that this is the first time she tried to talk to him about not leaving Shanann and trying to make it work. And he said they did, but it's not happening. Pause, stop the damn tape, all that stuff. Okay, this is a part that I think is completely cringe, because this is the lens I'm looking at this through. Okay, so you know when you're like first getting with somebody and it's like you're wanting to put your best foot forward and you're doing all that, and then not even that, but you're in that hot and heavy mode. And so then she's sitting here like, oh, you should go be with your wife. And this is how she portrays it in the interview. In the interview, she really tries to portray herself as like this virtuous, I was going to put my own feelings aside and help him and his wife get back together. And it's not very authentic, right? And so this is one of the first things in this where I'm like, really? Like, you were going to do that? Because what I think, and again, this is my opinion, it's not true, I was not there, I do not know any of these people personally, but I feel like this is a scenario that probably went something like this, where she was like, you know what, I'm going to try and, almost like a manipulation tactic, you know what I'm saying? Of, no, go, be with her, to number one, judge if he really wanted to be with her or not, and to see, like, almost to make him make a choice, right? Almost like, I've given you a taste of this new life, and now I'm going to threaten you by taking it away from you, meaning her, right? Of, no, but you need to be with your wife and kids. That's what you need to do, not this over here, not this over here. That kind of a thing, right? And so I think that was that. So I find this very insincere, right? I just don't think it went the way that she tried to portray it in this interview. Let's keep going. Okay. She says that the way that Chris described it is that he was in a contractual relationship with someone, but not an emotional one. And she would have preferred to wait until he was done, right? She says she should have waited on that, and she didn't. She says she backed away from him so that he would really try to work on his marriage. And she says that when he went to North Carolina, it was to rekindle the flame. So that, well, we know the way that Shanann talked about that, he was completely distant. That was absolutely, if that is true, if he told her that and that is all true, it is a total lie, right? Because we know from Shanann saying, look, this didn't go well, he was very distant, so on and so forth during that, right? So there's that. Now also, we're in a contractual relationship. I mean, a lot of people have ended up in this scenario, right? Of, we're getting a divorce, but we have kids in a house together, and we're trying to make that work right now. You know what I'm saying? Until we can get there. And they might sleep in separate beds and stuff. That's all fine and dandy, and that's all a choice. But it doesn't seem that that's really what was going on. And I'm not trying to say that NK is lying about this in this specific instance, and who knows, maybe that's been proven, but definitely Chris was portraying this. I just find it awkward, and will say, I'm kind of thinking out loud, that he was able to, like, how could you go to the house and not realize that, you know what I'm saying? But maybe she did go downstairs and see this stuff and was like, maybe that's where he's sleeping. You see what I'm saying? But there's other little things that come out that it just doesn't seem... It just doesn't seem that's the way it went down, but, whatever. Let's keep going. Okay, now this one was good right here. This one was good. Okay, she says she never met the kids, and he didn't want them to meet her. And she's like, nope, never asked. In the video, if you watch it, when the cops like, did you ever meet him? She's like, he never asked, or something like that. You could hear that, like, thing in her voice. Okay, she says, that's not good for the kids. We should date longer. The cop is, okay, so let's just stop right here in my notes. So she goes into this whole high and mighty thing about my place with Chris was like, that's something you do later, and like a year down the road, and like and goes all in all. And so the cop is finally like, the detective is finally like, did he ask for you to, did he want you to meet the kids? Because that's what she makes it sound like, that he had presented it and that she was putting the brakes on that. And she's like, no. I mean, but I think that he and I were on the same page. So a couple of things. She says, I think he and I were on the same page means they hadn't talked about it. So that means that she was reading into what he was saying or between the lines, because he never asked for the kids to meet her. And my thought process is, if you're having an affair, you know what I'm saying, and completely lying about it, of course you're not going to want your kids to meet her. You know what I mean? Like, why would you? Because they might actually be like, who's daddy's friend? Or you never know. You know what I mean? You know how kids are. Please hold. But this is one of those instances in the interview where when he is, and by he I mean the interviewer, he's asking this question because she's kind of like leading it in this direction that's just like, where are you coming from? Like, it doesn't make sense. And so to me, that's very telling, because if she's going to go down this rabbit hole like that of something that never really took place, but all these assumptions on how he must have felt and and making this up in her mind, but also pivoting herself to be morally superior in the situation. You know what I'm saying? It's telling, because it's like, well, what else was like that? So let's find out. Please hold. I put in here, she loves looking at the camera. Stares at the damn camera half the damn time. I mean, just loves looking at it. I get if it's like, especially if you've like, pardon me, if you work somewhere, like, you know, when you're somewhere like the cameras and stuff like that, like we have security cameras all over at work and stuff. Now, I don't sit there all day long and be like, hello, what's going on up there? But you notice them. But in this, it's like, oh my God, she's like literally eyeing them down. It's creepy. Okay, so at one point, the cop tells her he's not going to tell her all of the info that he has, and will ask questions in regards to his info. And she's like, understood, you know. And of course they're not. I just thought it was interesting that he told her that. There's a little bit along the way of like low-key putting her in her place, like, and not in a like a huge derogatory way, but you will get to some of these things where the cop kind of, you know, jokingly will call things out or say certain things like, well, did he ask you to meet the kids? You know, no, okay, you know, or like, well, we're not going to tell you everything. So yeah, and we'll get to some of the other little quips that he does along the way. Okay, so then this is a major one. Roscoe, fasten your damn sofa seat belt up for this one. This one's good. Okay, when asked about letting them put her phone on disc, she gets hesitant. Now, her dad's in the room, remember this. And she's like asking her dad, well, what do you think? And he's like, well, it would help line up, it would back up your story, basically, or whatever. Now, let me just go to my notes here. And she says, you know, I really want to help you guys, and I think that this is going to like blow up whether I give you my phone or not. Now remember, she's already done something with the phone, right? And this is when the dad says, you know, oh, it will back up stuff and whatever. So here's my thing with this. And then she'll say, like, there's the texts are raunchy, there's, you know, raunchy pictures, this kind of thing. And I 100%, anyone in any given situation, I'm not like defending her situation because we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but anybody, if you're in a situation where they wanted to like take your phone out, especially us here in the damn true crime world, right? I would immediately be like, oh my God, my Google searches alone. I mean, that's not even getting anything raunchy. That's just the true crime stuff. I'm like, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm crazy, right? You know, let alone even things that you might say with friends jokingly, stuff like that, whatever. Especially if you're brand new dating somebody. I mean, God only knows that we've seen some of the pictures. I mean, my word. But, you know, God only knows the stuff they're talking about. So I can respect that. Anybody would be like, and even if you didn't have any stuff like that, that's your private world, right? So I get that. But again, the fact of the matter with this situation where it's like, okay, like she makes such like a big deal out of it. And that's where it just seems weird. Now, she already deleted stuff on the phone. We know this. And the cops will tell her, you know what? Usually when people delete stuff, we kind of think they're a little sus, right? And I mean, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, let's keep going here. I think that's the next thing I say. Okay, here we go. It's kind of mixed in here, but we're going to jump around to a couple of things. So, yes, she says the texts are raunchy, all that type of stuff. She deleted stuff. Now, here's what she says. In regards to why she deleted stuff, she says it was the lie that it was a lie that made her question everything and then come forward. Now the lie is this, and I'm kind of just jumping through my notes. She says that she learned in the papers that Shanann was pregnant, and this made her realize he was lying to her. So she's like, what else has he been lying about? So remember that all this went down, and she's like, you know, kind of like, well, what's going on? And then all this stuff starts coming out in the papers. Please hold. And she's like, you know, allegedly just finding this information out. Now, the whole pregnancy thing, again, y'all help me out in the comment section. I thought has it been proven, this is my question to the Sofa Squad, has it been proven that she really knew that Shanann was pregnant before this? Like she had gone on Facebook, stalked or whatever. And we'll talk about that dynamic too, because I have some opinions on it. And maybe we should go ahead because I'll probably forget at this stage in life. So let's talk about that for a second. Okay, so this whole thing about, and again, y'all help me out here in the comment section. So this whole dynamic of, oh, I found out this and that and da-da-da. Here's the thing. And we're just going to call it Facebook stalking. And I say that like in a kind of like joking way, like Facebook stalk. Oh, when Facebook stalked them. Okay, so in this day and age, most of the time when somebody meets somebody that they like, they look them up on social media. This is basically a normal thing, right? So I've done it. Most everybody. This is like a normal behavior in social media world. I find it hard to believe that she would have met this dude at work, he comes in, the whole 9 yards, whatever went down, and that she wasn't looking him up on Facebook, right? Or doing any of this stuff, especially kind of knowing what we know now, like this like very intense, like obsessive on both their parts relationship, right? So I find it very hard to believe that she would not have gone to Facebook and looked this stuff up prior to arriving at the situation and getting all up in it with the scenario. Now again, that's my opinion, that's my thought. If y'all have hard evidence on that, let me know in the comment section. But regardless, no it's not, I'm just like, yeah, most everybody does that now, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's a thing, right? So anyways, that's my 2 cents on that. Let's keep going. Okay, so she says, text between her and Chris. Yeah, we did that. This is when the cop says, just for context, people delete stuff, we think it's a little sus. And she's like, no. Not me. Okay, then at one point he says, are you okay saying her name? He's talking about Shanann. And Nikki says that, but it's like super awkward. And I'm just like, I was like, oh my God. It was really awkward. And I thought that was interesting that the cops said that, because there's definitely stuff that, first of all, they're doing this interview, right? And they're interviewing her over and over. And he does say at one point, like, look, we want to make sure that everything is as it is. They're getting a lot of information from her, and the cops are saying you're not a suspect at this point and all that. But I mean, they have to like mark people off the damn list, right? And make sure that stories add up. And because she is the mistress, you just never know. And this was so out of the blue, right? And even she says, like, Chris there was no signs of anything from him. Like, he just didn't seem like this type dude. So there's that. Let's keep going. Okay, so at one point, now she says, that Chris portrayed it that he wanted to make it work, but Shanann didn't want it. Okay. Okay, now here's another part. So she says the only part that she screwed up on was being with him before he was fully separated, but that she tried taking things slow. She didn't want to jump into things and told him he needed to be single. I mean, again, and I don't know about y'all, but I've seen this before too, where I'm just like, people do this all the time, right? Where it's like this, not an ultimatum, but an ultimatum, right? Of, we're gonna, no, you know what? It's almost like an emotionally manipulative tactic to try and get something out of somebody. Like, you want a relationship out of them, so you're gonna be like, no, you need to be single. Let me just be over here. Well, no, but I really want to be with you. You see where I'm going with that? Like, this way to tell that somebody likes you or rope them in more and all this kind of stuff. So there's that. Okay, so let's continue. I actually had to stop recording because there were people outside the window walking their dogs. They have these cute little puppies, and Roscoe started barking and the whole 9 yards. So we had to take a puppy break real quick. Things are settled, so let's just continue. Although in editing, you probably won't notice this, but I'm just letting you know in case the continuity is off. Okay. So she says prior to the newspaper that she had... Says prior to the newspaper, she knew he had financial issues. And she said everything in the house was really nice. The car was expensive. She knew that he didn't make enough money to pay for that. She guessed that they together maybe made around $140K. But again, she's like, I don't 100% know this, whatever. She says that Chris blamed Shanann for blowing money. Okay, so during this part, Nikki sounds very, like, judgmental on this. Like, you can tell she's not a materialistic kind of girl. It's very important to her to put out there that she, like, puts her house together with discount stuff and this and that and da-da-da-da-da. To me, this also plays into the factor that there's probably a level of that going on of she sees that this is an issue with Chris and Shanann and, like, his, feelings, if what she says that he said is true. And so it was like I'm not like this. I'm not high maintenance. I shop at the thrift shop and Goodwill. I upcycle. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of a thing or whatever. And again, it's like very interesting how she wants to also seemingly to prove this point to investigators and whatnot and just really put it out there. So there's that. But again, all of this is like feeding into the larger thing of, there's a whole bunch of stuff that she goes into here that I think if you peer through the lines of it, read between the lines, I think that there was this level of emotional manipulation going on, right? Of this. And again, if you were dating somebody, there's a normal level of wanting to put your best foot forward. And so say there wasn't here is what's going on right now with this man and his wife, and so that's what I'm defining my personality off of, right? So, him and his wife, there's an issue with money. He thinks she spends too much. So I'm going to make sure to play up the fact that I like shopping discount. I don't have to have fancy things. I don't need to blow all my money on name brand stuff or whatever the case is. You see what I'm saying? That type thing. So it's interesting that how much that dynamic plays out in so many different things that we see coming out of her mouth in this interview. Let's keep going. Okay. When asked if I knew... This one's interesting. Okay, so when asked if she knew where his kids went to school, she's like, no, he didn't tell me. And when she was looking for an apartment at one point, she was like, trying to be like, hey, look, if it's cool, where do the kids go to school? So I can try and figure out like where all your stuff is and all that, to create like kind of know where to look. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. It'll be fine or whatever. And again, this is one of those things where you can kind of piece together some of the stuff that she throws out there, that it's just like, yeah, he didn't want you to know their names. He didn't want you to know where they went to school, so on and so forth. And remember, she's like, oh, I'm helping him look for an apartment and I'm doing this, but it wasn't for us. It was for this. Like she, in my opinion, she was trying to facilitate them separating and getting him away from that, right? Like to secure the deal, right? She's wanting to get this man. He's saying that he's going to do A, B, and C and leave and all this type of stuff. But again, these red flags, and here's my thing. So first of all, it's like, why ask that? Like, it's almost like testing a boundary. Like, where do your kids go to school? Well, why would you? I mean, again, you've known this person for 6 weeks, and on one hand, you're sitting here saying, oh, no, I mean, we were on the same page. I didn't need to meet the kids, this, that, and the other, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, within 6 weeks, and I believe it was 6 weeks, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like you're sitting here helping him find an apartment, doing this, getting all this kind of information. And I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just, if I take all the scenario out, if this is a scenario where you're in the middle of a separation, you have kids and all this, and you start hooking up with some chick on the side, now mind you, he knows that he's lying about everything, right? So regardless, it's like, I don't really want this person telling this person where my kids go to school and this and that. And even that thought process right alone tells you this doesn't need to be happening. It is too soon. But again, on his part, we already know, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on there. For her, I just think it's funny that he kind of is like sitting here and I'm like, girl, you're getting played by this dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, these red flags, if this is all legit, should have been going off. You're showing up to the house, right? It's clear he's told you, I'm still, living under the same roof. We have these kids, we're separating. You go to the house a couple of times, it's this vibe or whatever. He doesn't want you to know the kids' names. It doesn't want you to know where they go to school. I mean, it's a girl. You know what I'm saying? Read the room. Okay. So at another point, the officer, he asks like this hypothetical question. And he's like, after NL says she wouldn't have dated if she knew Shanae was pregnant, and this gets heated. And when talking about how they talked on the phone, officer tells her, I can tell you like to talk. Okay. So yeah, at one point he starts asking these hypothetical questions, and he goes into this whole thing, and this causes the dad to say, well, now hold on, you're asking this hypothetical stuff that didn't happen, and da-da-da-da-da. And the cop is going down this road of, did you say something to Chris in the context of, if this is going on, like, that right there. She's saying, oh, if I known that Shanae was pregnant, I would never have gone down that road. And he's like, did you tell him that? What do you think if you had told him that, it would have caused this or that? Because again, the cops are a couple of things. I think that they're trying to find out like what triggered this, but they're also trying to see, multiple things, right? But there is that level going on of, I think it's pretty obvious that there is some emotional manipulation going on during this. So I just think the cops are hinting at that. Now, I think I already kind of did the next line, but when talking about how they talked on the phone, and the officer's like, yeah, I can tell you like to talk. Because he's like, well, how much were you on the phone? Because again, one thing I find just bizarre with this is how much how hot and heavy this went, but again, she was out of town, meaning Shanae and the kids were out of town for some of it. Again, it's like she went out of town and Chris just jumped into this affair, and I think he got a taste of an entirely different world, and he is completely emotionally unprepared to know what to do with any of that, right? It's something that he's just like, what? So anyways, let's keep going. Okay. So then they talk about the incident, all these text messages or tweets. They talk about the peanut incident in North Carolina, right? And it says that Chris said his parents ignored him for 2 days before he arrived and then just left a note on the door saying that they had gone to the beach. NK makes a point to say she was encouraging him to see his people because family isn't important. It's like she's constantly trying to sell. Okay, yeah. So she talks about the story during this, about him going to North Carolina, and he's going to try and save the marriage, and his parents started ignoring him a couple of days before he goes there, and then they left a letter on the door saying they're at the beach. That whole incident went down. There's like differing stories, of course, depending on who you listen to, as to what really went down with the peanut situation and one of the girls and Shanann. So if that was true, that happened, I mean, this would seem on brand for what has been discussed of the dynamics between that side of the family, Chris and his mother and stuff, right? But again, it's also another opportunity for Nikki to sit here and talk about, I told him, because be your people, that's important. You need to be around them, and da-da-da-da. And it's like, why are you trying to sell yourself so hardcore on these moral things? And so it's just like, what is the motivation for that? Why at every chance is this a thing in these interviews of, look at how morally, balanced I am and all that? And I mean, I guess one answer is obvious. Well, look at what's being, exposed that she's done, right? So there's that. Now, at one point, she does finally break down and cry. This is my next note. Okay, so to me, it seemed legitimate, like, right? Even in her own way. Like, when she started doing that, like, do I think some of it was hammed up and dramatic? Yeah, but I think she's a hammed up and dramatic person, right? This was a moment that I was looking for in other scenarios with her, because remember the other interview, I never really saw her act distraught over it. Mind you, God knows how far into the damn video it is. You know what I'm saying? And part of it does feel a little bit like, oh yeah, we need to cue this part up or whatever. But it's that level of like, that's kind of what I would expect, because even watching this years later, I'm like, this is still horrifying to me, right? The thought of this. So I can't imagine days after. I don't know. It's something. It's a reaction that I wanted to at least see, but it also still feels odd, if that makes sense. Okay, this part, the leave Jim alone. Okay, so she has a friend with the key to the apartment. Is there the day it went down. She doesn't want him to know anything. Cops are like, we're going to confirm your whereabouts. And again, this becomes a whole thing. And she's like, don't pull Jim into this. Don't pull Jim into it. Leave him alone. And I'm just kind of like, okay, that's weird. Like, one thing with this, watching this, is I'm like, oh my God, they have no idea how this is going to end. I mean, like, that years later, her name is still going to be out there. All this information, right? It's just, but at this point in time, it hadn't blown up the way it was going to. And of course, the cops go into this. I do think the Jim dynamic, I often wonder, does she try and utilize that as a jealousy pivotal point? Of, oh, no, I'm over here with my friend or whatever. I don't know if she did that or not, but I mean, I just feel like some of the other behaviors we've seen, that's not, too far out of the batting range of possibilities. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. The last text was, if you did something bad, you're going to ruin your life and mine. And he told her that he did not hurt his family. Okay, so first of all, the fact that, this is the last text she's having with him when she starts to realize this. And it's like, you're going to ruin your life and mine. And I'm like, well, what about Shanann and the girls? Okay. And that's like the afterthought or whatever, right? She said at this point, because he lied and they weren't home and all their important stuff is missing, this is when she started thinking he did something to them. Okay, this would make sense, right? She says she had a hard time believing she was the catalyst for all of this. She thinks she accelerated what was inevitable. And this is an interesting point. We'll talk about this. She thinks they stuck together because of the kids and that Shanann disregarded money issues and that Chris was too passive. She thinks Chris met her and she was like a breath of fresh air. Okay, now this part, I do agree with that part about him meeting her. And she was like this whole new world of, you know what I'm saying? And like he just kind of dived into it. Now, here's my thought process too. I'm like, pretend that none of the horrible stuff happened and that he divorced and went with Nikki. The same thing would have happened eventually. I think Chris is a passive kind of person and doesn't speak his mind and doesn't say anything, and he's probably going to be with a domineering person. I'm sorry, but a little bit I've seen of Nikki, she can sit here and try and pivot herself as being like the opposite of Shanann, but I'm like, oh no, this would be a controlling person. Like, she's very alpha seeming, right? And Chris does not seem like an alpha type dude. He seems very kind of beta and passive and all that. And so that's where I just think that, yeah, this could have ended up being her at some point, right? So I do agree with some of her dynamics on that, of what she thinks was, you know, when she says this was inevitable, I mean, to what took place exactly, I mean, God, I would hope not, right? But at least, you know, at minimum, like a divorce, right? I mean, I don't know. Anyways, let's keep going. She has no idea why he did what he did to the children. She suggests maybe they woke up and saw what was being done to their mom. Now, again, this... You know, I have no real opinion on that because I have no idea. I have no idea. You know, I watched the cheesy movie that was made and stuff like that, and there's so many different theories as to what exactly happened in those last moments, why he chose to do to the girls what he did. I do think something of that flavor is in there of they probably witnessed what was going on or whatever. My mind cannot wrap around what he ended up doing to them, though, to the level that he did that. The absolute horror of it and the last moments here on Earth that they spent is absolutely terrifying and completely heartbreaking for them. It bothers me to my soul. She said, okay, I'm going to continue. She says he was way more into her than she was him. Yeah, honey, you keep telling yourself that. I don't believe that. She haphazardly talks about a house together, a marriage. See, these things come out like, oh no, you know, I mean, I wasn't saying it like directly, but you know, I mean, I was like saying, you know, like, well, down the road we could do this. Trust me, in my opinion, I say trust me like I know, in my opinion, I 100% think that she was dropping little things here and there. I mean, this is, you know how it is. When you're in that love for 6 weeks, all that kind of stuff, you're saying stuff and all this type of stuff, and the jets have to cool a little bit, right? So for her to sit here and try and make it out like she was this level-headed, this, that, and the other, and I'm like, well, the proof is in the damn pudding, girl, because you were dating a married man. Now, whether he told you he was married or not is almost damn irrelevant, because there was enough red flags to walk up into the situation and be like, that is complicated, that's gonna be messy, please hold. You know what I'm saying? Period. And that's all, period. Says the biggest complaint was that his wife didn't listen or communicate. She says towards the end they talk about the media, her job, and it's okay, yeah. So towards the end of this, they're talking about her job, the media, all this type of stuff, and knowing what happens now, looking back on it, I'm like, girl, fasten your damn sofa seatbelt, girl, because it's gonna be a bumpy damn ride, okay? So that's all the notes that I made about it. And if you're still listening, I wanted to kind of do it this way and just have more of like a podcasty vibe to this to go through it, because I mean it's a huge video, and you've heard my opinion throughout. Yeah, I don't believe a lot of the stuff that she's saying. I think she tries to in an incredible way try and pivot herself to be very, you know, taking the high road and, you know, high moral authority and this and that, and, you know, downplaying the intensity of the relationship and how much she was into it, making it sound like she really wasn't that into him as much and she was I just don't believe that. I think they went hot and heavy. I think that she tried to do a lot of emotionally manipulative tactics to him. I think that she was way more investigative journalism into who he was and all that. Who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be? I mean, it's almost absurd to suggest otherwise. Now, again, you know, I don't know all the hardcore evidence of, oh, well, it shows that she looked this up on that. I don't know that stuff. Please hold. So, you know, there's that. But just, I think that there's some truths in here for some of the stuff that she talks about in regards to maybe some of the things that Chris was saying, reading through the line, looking between the lines, that kind of thing. I think we do get a peek into maybe some of the motivations of the type person that Chris was and how passive he was, and how years of just not saying anything and all that just kind of led up to him absolutely snapping. And there's that. So with her, and again, I said at the beginning of the video, and I'll say it again, anytime this comes up and I'm listening to her talk about these scenarios and she's kind of giggling and laughing and trying so hard to like prove something to the cops, right? And the whole time you're just thinking of these two little girls and Shanann, and you're just like, and I mean, I know it's different and it's like different context and all that kind of stuff, but no matter what, I just can't get that image out of my mind. I can't get my image out of her standing in their home. You know what I'm saying? This scenario is like a lot of people's worst nightmare. If you've ever been cheated on, I have, a lot of people have, it is a horrifying feeling. God only knows for it to end up like this, right? But so to be hearing from like the other woman, it just is something that doesn't sit well, and I'm sure she's aware of that. You know what I mean? That's one reason why she's probably trying so hard to be like, I'm good, and I would love to know what she's up to. So anyways, that's it. Let me know what you think down in the comment sections. If you're still here watching, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Again, don't forget to subscribe to all my channels, this one, the podcast channel. All those links are down in the description below. Thank you to everybody who makes the channel possible. I greatly appreciate you. It wouldn't be here without you, and guess what? Little Miss Roscoe wouldn't be either. Anyways, I love you guys, and I will talk to you soon. I'll see you on the flip side.